good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. Boker Tov, Shavua Tov, good week, Chodesh Tov, good month. So all the good things. I'm going to introduce myself, and we'll get and what we're doing here and the conceit of the morning, and then I will then turn it over to Lazer. But good morning, everyone. My name is Malya Levin. I am my husband here is William Levin, and we are here in Alliance, New Jersey, the site of the first Jewish farm community in North America, and we are here for the first of a 6-part series, Speaking Yiddish with Rabbis. This series was conceived as a informal discussion for us to all be sharing the rich and unique history of this place, and that all of us share in some way, and to share it with ourselves and with each other. And so originally it was just conceived as an in-person conversation, but then there were some wise suggestions to open it up to our Zoom community that might bring more people in. And so we've done that, and so we're very happy to have you all here with us as well. We hope you will enjoy the sort of participatory discussion that we're going to be having this morning, and we will look to you toward the end to participate as well if you'd like. So that's the setting here. I want to thank the New Jersey Historical Commission, who has helped to support this event, this series, through the Salem County Board of County Commissioners and the Salem County Cultural and Heritage Commission. And I also want to thank Liz Posen, who hopefully is joining us on Zoom and has generously helped to sponsor this event as well. We are here. The organization that received this grant is Alliance Community Reboot. We're an organization based here, dedicated to celebrating and learning about the unique Jewish history of this farm community. And we are. This is the first of a 6-part series, as I said. Last year, we got a generous grant to create a mural. And we had celebrated portrait artist Jonathan Blum, who's based in Brooklyn, come here and paint a mural on the exterior of this building that's right behind us. Part of the conceit of creating this mural was to have it as a meaningful backdrop for events just like this, because it tells the story of this community, the immigration here from Russia, fleeing persecution, the arrival at Castle Garden, which was where immigrants were received before Ellis Island was created, the migration down here to South New Jersey, the creation of farm community in the 1880s, the joining of the second wave of immigrants post-Holocaust, the survivors who started chicken farms. And then finally, the third wall is a tribute actually to this extremely dilapidated structure that our in-person participants can also see, which was the house of William's great-great-grandfather Moshe Bayek, who was one of the original leaders of the settlers, and whose house has become an icon of the community that was and continues to be. So we're here and to celebrate Yiddish specifically as sort of a tie that tied all of those long-standing threads together and was sort of integral to the culture and the community. And so I'm very happy to introduce Rabbi Lazer Mishulovin as our facilitator this morning. Rabbi Mishulovin is currently Shabbat rabbi and holiday rabbi at Sons of Jacob in Vineland. He's also a professional Yiddish translator and researcher, a native speaker. So he's helped families uncover their history by interpreting Yiddish and deciphering old Yiddish letters, journals, memoirs. He's written for the Allgemeiner Journal. He's taught Yiddish classes in New York and Chicago. He currently teaches at Cheder Chabad of Philadelphia. So he's steeped in our topic of the day, and we're excited to hear from him, but also to hear from all of you and to talk and learn together.
Thank you, Laura.
Welcome.
Shalom Aleichem.
Aleichem Shalom.
Mein Name ist Eliezer. Ich heiße Lazer. Alle verstehen Yiddish?
Ja. Nein.
My name is My Hebrew name is Eliezer, and I'm called Lazer. Lazer, of course, is a Yiddish name. Everyone knows the name Lazer. Especially this generation. You're welcome to introduce yourselves in Yiddish as well. You're welcome to introduce yourselves in Yiddish. If you feel comfortable, maybe share your Yiddish name. It's a pleasure to see everyone. In the old Yiddish days of the Yiddish radio, they would start off saying, Chosheve Radio Zuhörers. So I'll say, Chosheve Zoom Zuhörers, Shalom Aleichem to you. And Shalom Aleichem, Chosheve Versammelte, Chosheve Gast, Chosheve Rabbis, Rabbonim, Freuen, Damen, all mentioned. And maybe we start with William over here. Introduce yourself.
Sure, guys. Good Tag. My name is William Levin. I am a descendant of the Alliance colony, and specifically of Moshe Bayek, who is a liaison for the Alliance colonists and their generous patrons who sponsored their ability to be here to emigrate from Russia to escape persecution in 1882. That's the short story, but thank you guys. And what a lot of people thought I was the guy in the flyer, but how could you confuse me for Lazer? We're two completely different people.
Talk about that. This is Malya, also a Yiddish name.
Yes.
Malya is.
I'm Malya, as I said, William's wife. My dad always, Malya was my great grandmother's name. It's a Yiddish name. I was told it's a Yiddish diminutive of Malka, which means queen. So it's like, little princess, which is obviously the essence of me. And this is Yehuda Maccabee. He's sixth generation descendant here.
Yeah.
Straight up. A little princess. In Yiddish, it's a princeska. Princeska. So the title of this morning here is Yiddish, Speaking Yiddish to Rabbis.
With rabbis.
With rabbis. And I think it begs some clarity. Who are the rabbis in this room, first of all? We're all rabbis. So I think we could say we're all rabbis here in this room. Some of you even have a rabbi look over here, besides for me. And in Yiddish, the word for sir in Yiddish is Reb.
And we've been asked to speak louder.
In Yiddish, the word for sir is Reb. Reb is also short for rabbi. So, when you refer to someone, you can say Reb, Michal, Howard, Yaakov, Stephen. And, or you could, if you don't know the person, you could say Rabbi. So everyone here is rabbis. And say even the women in the room is included as well. Just to say a little joke, maybe you have to pause the recording for this joke.
Okay, it's paused.
I once, a number of years ago, I walked into the workers' circle in Pico Robertson. I saw a mural as well, the very distinctive Yiddish-looking phonimes and Yiddish words. Arbeiterin, workers' circle. Used to be called workmen's circle. They changed the name workers' circle to include everyone. And so I walked inside and I saw, typical Yiddish-speaking Yiddishist, mustache and no kippah. And he was talking to me how he learned his Yiddish, bragged about it. He said, "Mein Yiddish is nicht von Frankreich. My Yiddish is nicht von Österreich, Austria. My Yiddish is from Weinreich." Anyone ever heard of Weinreich?
No.
Max Weinreich is a Yiddish dictionary. He learned Yiddish from Weinreich, and he had a very American race. And we were talking about maybe the name worker circle, workmen's circle, before they changed the name. So he asked me a question. In the Orthodoxy, you have the husband is the rabbi, and what do you call the wife? Rebbetzin. By Reform, the wife is the rabbi. What do you call the husband? Rebbetzin.
I think you need to.
Very good.
I'll translate that.
Never mind.
These are squeamish about
I
it.
don't know if it needs translation.
Does it need translation?
Everybody knows what it is.
Okay.
I didn't.
You don't know?
I know now, but
Yale
earlier I didn't.
at the Philadelphia market and the Union.
It's
Union.
Yes.
Eggs, yes. The bell.
Eggs, right? Eggs.
I still don't know what it means.
Oh.
You know, it can't explain jokes. For the sake of time.
It's balls, right? So
Yes.
that's what you'd call, if that's not a rebbitzin, a male spouse of a rabbi is rebbitzin.
So that's all of us here. So you're all welcome to talk. You're all welcome to interrupt and introduce yourself maybe when you do. And speaking, of course, is schmooze, so we can schmooze. Yiddish. What does it mean speaking Yiddish? So unfortunately, not everyone here speaks Yiddish, so we could like sprinkle some Yiddish buzzwords. But Yiddish could also mean Yiddishkeit. There was once a story of a traveling rabbi, a traveling maggid, preacher of sorts that would come to different American cities, maybe even came to Vineland, and he would talk about what these preachers usually talk about. But before he came to one of these shuls, one of these congregations, so before he's about to speak, the rabbi goes over to him and tells him, maybe don't mention anything about maybe don't. He said it secretly, but quietly. He said, maybe don't mention anything about Shabbos because our treasurer drives the shul on Shabbos. Okay, so then maybe I'll talk about keeping kosher. Don't talk about keeping kosher because our vice president owns a restaurant. It has shrimps in the spring rolls. Okay, so maybe you talk about intermarriage. Some of our community, So what should I talk about? So just talk about Yiddishkeit. So disclaimer, even though it's rabbis and Yiddish, we could talk about Yiddishkeit. We could talk about anything. I want to maybe open up, since we're getting closer to Pesach now. This could be in the form of a storytelling of our own history, our own tradition, our own Yetzias Mitzrayim, where we all came from. Everyone has their own stories about their own ancestors, what they were like, and their typical story from to freedom. So if you want to talk about that, and I'll open up with in the style of Haggadah, I'll open up with a question, Manishtana. Right, Jews always ask questions. Manishtana speaks. What is different? Like I said in Yiddish, you should say Manishtana in Yiddish. Manishtana Malya Levin. Was ist anders, weil in New Jersey von Newark, New Jersey. Oder Brownsville, Helen comes from Brownsville. So Manishtana, what is the difference of Vineland, New Jersey, and Newark, New Jersey? And we have 4 sons or 4 daughters. Maybe 4 people can volunteer and be more specific about how is Vineland, New Jersey different than, let's say, another city that has also great Jewish past of Jewish history. Newark, New Jersey had Philip Roth, maybe Allen Ginsberg. So, what's the difference between Vineland and Newark? And maybe we'll get the answer to that by the end of this Seder. So, who wants to be the Chuchim? Who wants to be the Chuchim here? And you're from North Jersey, so you're the closest here. Huh?
From Newark.
From Newark. There you go. Did you see Howard and everything?
So, a little story about, I'm going to skip to when the family was here. I had known William's grandparents way before I knew William. And Harry Levin, who was a judge and a lawyer, he was the one, because if you get into Yiddish, my grandparents only spoke Yiddish and Russian. And I was very young when they passed away. So my mother kept it up the Yiddish a little bit with her sister. But anyway, Harry was the one that for all those people here that didn't speak English and came here and only knew Yiddish, being a lawyer and a judge, he was the one that took care of their immigration papers,
Right.
their legal papers, and all that. And then getting back to like growing up in Newark, what was funny is my mother came from a farm that I guess they came in about 1885 maybe, or 6, and got the farm. But when they came out of Russia, the gold finds, they ended up on the Lower East Side in New York, and were living in the tenements there. And there was one brother, a gold find that was in America before the other two. He's the one that got the farm together for him down here. The way my mother ended up in Newark, her travels was on the farm. My grandfather had died real young, so my grandmother, because she had 2 older siblings, it was just my grandmother and my grandmother and my mother on the farm. So what happened is my grandmother pushed my mother to leave the farm. She said, "This is not a place for a young girl. It's, desolate. There's nothing left." So my mother joined the cadet nurses, lived in Philly in a Jewish woman's place, ended up going and getting her nursing degree in Newark Beth Israel Hospital. Short story, growing up in Newark.
Short story, yes.
Yeah. Had a very
I keep it on my set instead of lying in Megillah.
So she ended up there. Newark had a very vibrant Jewish community in the Weequahic area.
Right.
And mostly before the riots in '65, most of the Jews have moved out up into surrounding areas. My father comes back from the army.
Right.
His father died. The Jaffe family moves to Newark. My father comes back from the service, works for a cousin in a laundry, meets my mother, and that's how I got here.
Wow, that's a great long answer. It's one of the questions, and maybe in the spirit of that God, I will keep the question like a one phrase, because otherwise we'll be here all night. And the rabbis will come, will tell us we have to start this on minute.
Interject one quick thing, which is just that this is part 1 of our 6-part series, and the focus is the world that they left behind.
Okay.
So where did they come from, right? They were coming here. Where did they come from? And that is depicted on our mural with the scene of the burning shtetl that there's, and then the ship taking them away toward new immigration, toward new shores, and hopefully freedom and safety. So. And I'm curious, actually, because, I married into this illustrious lineage, but I know I've heard sort of like conflicting things about who the people were and what they were leaving behind. Like some people say, I know Rich Brotman has a great documentary where there's an interview where people are describing the original people who came here as yeshiva buchers, that they were yeshiva buchers who came here. They were coming from a European yeshiva. But then I've heard other people who say they were professional. They had trades, what we would call like white collar trades, but they abandoned and became farmers. Either way, it sounds like they didn't know what they were doing with farming. But I'm curious where they came from. Like, where were they? What were they in the old world? They were probably speaking Yiddish, but sort of like what kind of Yiddish? What were they doing?
Yes. So as you see in the mural, there are 3 personalities depicted of the original settlers here in Alliance, New Jersey. The one facing right in front of us, his name is Isaac Isaacson. Krasenstein, sorry. Isaac Krasenstein. And he was a sheikhet here. He's just to say the depiction of here is a Reb Yid with a bard and tefillin, and the tallis you can't see because it's below his below the ground in the mural. And he was here as a sheikhet. He's holding the knife, the challah here. So that's one type of personality that came to this.
What is a sheikhet, please?
A sheikhet is a slaughterer, a ritual slaughterer, which was also necessary here. And so the first settlers, you had different types, like you pointed out. You had on the other side of the mural, on the right side near the house, the original house was a depiction of Moshe Bayek, which is William's great grandfather.
Great.
And he was He was a scholar and
A justice of the peace here,
a
a lawyer.
a learned man, an intellectual, and on the
And I heard he was imprisoned in Russia, or in Odessa, not Odessa, in Bialystok.
these Jews came from the old country. Now, where did they come from? They came from the Pale of Settlement, also known the Tchum HaMoshav in Hebrew, which was part of Russia, Ukraine, and this was the times of the pogroms in the mid 18th century, and they were fleeing pogroms, looking for better opportunity, but they were not specifically one type of person. And it just brings us back to Haggadah. Is a word in Haggadah about every night of the year we eat all types of vegetables, and then this night we eat maror. So in Yiddish, the word for all types of vegetables is, in Hebrew in the Haggadah, it's sha'ar yerakos, or in Yiddish it's allerlei grinsen, or in short you could say chlarlei. So the type of Jews who were here was chlarlei, which means like all different types. It wasn't just one distinctive type. You had maybe you can even make a joke. A maskil, a chassid, and a poshtayid walk into a shul and violent. A maskil is intellectual, a aufgeklärter in Yiddish, a learned person that knows beyond, knows that the religious studies, is also educated in other languages, more of a rational approach. Sometimes they were also considered apostates. They're not necessarily full-on apostates, but it's also a spectrum. Speaking of the Haggadah, there's four sons in the Haggadah, right? There's a Chacham, Russia, Pam, Chain de Elisha. So Chacham is the wise man. Russia is the evil person, and none of them are really. We can't really call even a maskil a Russia, although some people called the first maskil Moses Mendelssohn. Some people gave him the title Russia, which we don't necessarily support that, but at the time the way some Jews referred to him. But you had a maskil wasn't a Russia, but he was a chacham.
Maskil is like the haskala, right? Which
a maskil is the same word as haskala. It means a scholar, intellectual person, and that's what you could say Moshe Biek fits that type. I saw some of his writing. He has a plethora of writings on all different subjects of Jewish thought.
The legend that I heard from your grandfather in Rich Brotman's video is that Moshe Biek had a running card game with Leo Tolstoy. That he was part of a circle that played cards, and Leo Tolstoy was part of the circle, and that Leo Tolstoy, I don't know, in one version of the story, Leo Tolstoy owed him money, or maybe one of them owed the other one money, but either way, Leo Tolstoy, was one of the guys who was like, you should get out of Dodge, leave Russia, basically, because, Leo Tolstoy had his own problems with the Russian authorities, but, you can imagine, that type, someone who would be in an intellectual circle with Tolstoy.
So, in yeshiva back in the day, in that period, when some of the yeshiva boys were turning towards Haskalah, they would read Tolstoy under the blanket. Moshe Biek would come to shul maybe to help make the minyan, and he would have Tolstoy in his bosom keshenet, in his breast pocket. So that's that's one type of personality that came from the old country.
And I think he would bring a cigar. I read that
Bring a cigar to shul?
To smoke after
nice.
On Shabbat. It was his thing, I think.
Rabbi, one skill set that Malya that's missing from the conversation so far was the tailors, the Schneiders. Because as evidence, there were 3 clothing factories right on the street. One where Howard's cousins lived was the clothing factory, and 2 more up in Brotmanville, right up the road. Because I know when my grandfather came here, they said, "What can you do?" He said, "I can sew," because he said everybody had to know how to sew before they got out of 8th grade. They had to make their own clothes.
Right.
And all the people here in the wintertime, they would sit and sew things to make a little extra money in between the crops.
The Shekoyach Norman, because that brings us to the third personality. The the Amcha Yid. Amcha Yid is Amcha Me'am, like Am Yisrael Chai, Amcha is folk. In Yiddish, it's Amcha Yid is like the Yid that's not a chassid, not a Torah scholar, the simpleton, maybe the Tam in the Haggadah, the Pashat Yid, I'm looking for other synonyms of Amcha. Amma Aretz is a good one. Amma Aretz means ignoramus, but literally Amma Aretz means that nation of the land or people of the land, and it's also translated people who work with the land. So that's also another thing. Like the salt of the earth, exactly.
Yeah.
Salt of the earth. So craftspeople, Balei Malacha, they were also the other archetype of personalities that came from the old country. So if you want to learn a little Yiddish from this little gathering, you could the words you could take home with you. Amcha Yid, Pashat Yid, and there's also a word actually, the Chuchim from Manashtana. Have anyone ever heard that? Chuchim from Manashtana? What does it mean, Gail?
The wise one from prayer.
The wise one from the Manashtana, right. The person who always has something to say, not necessarily always the right time in the right place. The chuchum from the Manashtana.
Like the teacher's pet kind of, or like the no,
maybe
clever clogs.
Leave it up to the other rabbis to interpret. So Gail here wants to say, yes.
I have something to say. And what I would like to say is that all of the farmers, we were all farmers in the 40s and 50s. But the people that came here were not farmers in Europe. All our friends were doctors, lawyers, Malamed teachers. They were all professionals. Malamed is a teacher. That's why I said Malamed teacher.
So Gail is saying, I'm just going to repeat what you're saying for those who can't hear. Gail is saying that Gail is reiterating that. I think Gail is referring to the second wave of immigrants who came here after the Holocaust. So not those people. No one was a farmer back in Europe. They were all professionals.
Well, in the 1800s, everybody just basically in Russia was a farmer.
I wonder, is that true?
Oh, so we're getting back. Thank you so much. So this, as you said, it's a 6-part series. So we're focusing now on this syllabus, a syllabi, pardon from my pidgin English. Today, we are talking about where they came from. We want to focus on that. And in Hashem, we will come back. We'll talk more about how life was over here. So you mentioned that there were farmers back in the old country. So one of the things were about why the Jews left the old country to come here. They were invited by the Alliance, which is the organization led by Baron D. Hirsch, which the Hebrew name for that was Kol Yisrael Chaverim. It was an organization founded in Odessa, and it was a time when it was the Jewish question. They were looking for solutions for anti-Semitism, for running away from pogroms, as the mural shows. Shuls and houses on fire. That was literally that says, but also people were looking for better opportunity where they could feel safe as Jews. And Baron Hirsch, I think, wrote petitions to the Tsar about giving Jews opportunity to work opportunity. Some of them would be farmers, and they thought that would help also take away the stigma that Jews do not know how to work the land. That was maybe one of the things that bred anti-Semitism. So, but it's not necessarily.
So they couldn't work the land, so they could never be self-sufficient. Like, was that the idea?
Perhaps that's one of them, or also the fact also.
What?
Sorry,
They couldn't own land.
They weren't allowed to own land.
Because they were tenant farmers.
So, by the way, I'm not a historian, so do not quote me. This is all anecdotal, just a disclaimer. We're using
Knowledge here.
ever from my exposure, from years of talking to people like you and reading and visiting these foreign countries. I'm just going to finish my thought. And I'll get right to you. But I do want to say that there were, this is called a colony, right? There were colonies back in Russia, going back already in probably the mid 17th century. In fact, the second Chabad Rebbe had a big project to settle lots of his Hasidim in colonies in the Pale settlement. It was called colonias near the Kherson region, and that was a way for them to have like opportunity for work and to balance religion and work. He would have his Hasidim that would come visit him during the holidays and learn some of his teaching. They would go from town to town and repeat some of his teaching. And one of the big Hasidim asked this Rebbe, these people I'm going to, they are Amcha Yidden, they are Amaratzim. And I'm going to teach them the teachings I learned from you, but they're really not at that level. So maybe I shouldn't be teaching them these type of things. So the Rebbe said, this is the second Chabad Rebbe, Reb Dober. He said, even if they don't understand, their neshama, their soul hears. So you go on, continue with your traveling, with your teaching, and this is also another example of what Amcha Yid. Amcha Yid, perhaps their neshama, their soul, is even stronger than the scholar, and that was one of the revolutions of Hasidism, that they put a more stronger emphasis, that even though before that the scholar was an elitist, those that were more simpleton had maybe a better connection to God because it was so much more authentic and real. So this continued for over 100 years. This what they were called colonisten. They were called colonisten. In fact, I even heard from my grandmother. She's not alive anymore. She grew up in Crimea, and I don't think she was a colonist, but she knew colonisten, and she remembers with her brother. They used to also grow potatoes, and she taught me a song, and I don't remember the rest of the song that she heard from colonisten. It went like, Ich bin a Yida Kolonist. If anyone knows the rest of the song, anyone has, I don't know the rest of the song. Maybe we could form our own. Even though today the word colonist is not such a PC word, but back in the day, I'm sure that the Jews that were colonists in Russia, they were not. No one accused them of being a colonist the way they used it today. So there were farmers back in the old country, Yiddish farmers. Another word for a farmer, we mentioned farmers. A poyer, but a poyer is a very like
Peasant.
It's a peasant. It was probably used more for the goy, like a poyer. It's pardon if I'm not PC. That's the way Yiddish was back in the day. It's someone who maybe is a little bit more crude.
Farm.
Farmer. It's a farmer, but to call a Yid a poyer was a little bit derogatory. It's so a Yid maybe was called a Yeshuvnik. A Yeshuvnik means like a dorfsmensch. It's another word. It's settler, yeah, like the Yeshuv they had later in Israel. So these are all words you could take home with you. Yeshuvnik. First time I heard that word, you said before, Bauer, but Poyer,
I think that's true.
Bauer, Fademed.
They were, Amolam was a philosophical movement that believes that the Jews should be working the land. It wasn't a Zionist movement per se, which is more how we're familiar with, like the idea of working the land connected to the states, connected to the land of Israel. This was just the general idea that Jews should be working the land. Where ancestrally we had all of our laws centered and our rituals centered around farm and farm rhythms, and that. But also, like what Rabbi Lazer is saying, that working the land was a key to our financial independence and therefore a degree of security for us, because we wouldn't be dependent on sort of a larger system that could cut us off. Or frankly, I think what we're saying, the Pale of Settlement is called the Pale of Settlement because Jews had to live there.
Right.
It wasn't like they all
They were not
wanted to
allowed-
live in some
they were not
crowded,
allowed
tiny
anywhere else.
slice of Eastern Europe. It's not like they all decided to go there. They were forced to be there. And the Haskalah, which was this Enlightenment movement in the 1800s that Moses Bayek and his ilk, and probably many of the original settlers were part of, they were in a sense a product of that Enlightenment, which opened up more professional white-collar opportunity to Jews, because it used to be that Jews, couldn't partake in those professions. They weren't permitted to be any of those things. But then there was some Enlightenment where Jews were allowed more into secular society. But in the 1880s, under the Tsar, that was sort of retracting again, and it was closing up, and more their rights were being taken away. And so the Am Olam movement, I think, was a reaction to saying, listen, if we become doctors and lawyers and these other kind of professionals that are reliant on sort of the permission of the government to operate in this way, then we can always have it taken away from us, like the Tsar is threatening to do to us, and conscript all our children into the army for 20 years, et cetera, et cetera. But if we're farmers and we have a piece of land, it might be difficult, but we know where our food is coming from, and we're independent, and it doesn't, to a degree, it means they can't take it away from us as easily.
But the farm never belonged to any Jew. They were not allowed to own it.
So I think then the idea of the Am Olam movement and the Alliance was maybe we can go other places other than Russia where we can own the land, or our organization can own the land. And I think the Alliance, and then later on the Baron, were patrons of getting Jews to places where they could own land more permanently and set up these more permanent farm communities.
I'm moving the
Original
camera.
settlers came around a little before 1880, I believe, or between 1880. And there's different numbers who they were, whether there were 6, 12, 42. The shul has a list of the plaque of the first members. And where they exactly came from also is not, then they weren't, just as they weren't monolithic, they also did not come from one exact city. Moshe Bayek came from Bialystok, similar to your grandparents. Bialystok was between Poland and Ukraine. Not going to get into the region now.
Poland.
What?
Northern Poland.
Northern Poland, but it's one of those cities that changed. Latvia or Lithuania? Lithuania, yes. Some of them, the Chassid that you see here, the Shoichet, he was a Chassid, a Breslov Chassid, so he probably came either from Breslov or from Uman, or he could have been from somewhere else. Maybe they brought him down because he was a Shoichet, and he was a Shoichet. I don't know what he was looking for here, but he's from the Breslov Hasidim, which is a very interesting tradition of Hasidim. They only had one Rebbe, and later on they all relied on that Rebbe, even though the Rebbe passed away. And they were actually also called in Yiddish, they were called the Toite Hasidim, because the Rebbe was Toit.
Toit means dead.
Right. This is another.
Dead?
Yeah. And there's another fellow, where the other third person maybe we could call Amcha was Moses Brutman. That's why Brutmanville next door, named after him. He was a businessman, and he came from Galicia. And I don't remember exactly which city. Galicia was part of
Galicia is Spain, part of Poland. There's
part of
no
Poland.
Yeah.
I don't remember which exact city. So they came from all different cities, but the perception is that they came from Odessa because, first of all, Am Olam was based in Odessa, and maybe a lot of the people did come from Odessa. Maybe they had to go through Odessa to do the paper. Odessa was also a port city. Maybe that's where they left from. I don't know. There was also another colony in America, in Oregon, called New Odessa. So maybe some people are conflating, but the historians were able to confirm how many actually came from Odessa. The Am Olam was formed in Odessa. Odessa was a very cosmopolitan, Yiddish-speaking city. A lot of Yiddish writers come from there, Yiddish playwriters, Yiddish poets, Hebrew poets spent some time there. This was like the Berlin of the Yiddish-speaking world on the Black Sea, and Jewish organizations. By the way, the Hebrew name for how do you say it in French?
Alliance Israeli Universelle.
Alliance Israeli
Universelle.
Universelle. So Alliance means like together, united, and Israeli is Israel. The Hebrew name for the organization was Kol Yisrael Chaverim. Have anyone ever heard that one?
No.
It was his names in streets in Israel. You see Piach Kuf Yud Ches. That stands for Kol Yisrael Chaverim. That's the Hebrew name for this organization. In fact, these are the type of organizations that had contentions with the Orthodox because they were the more secular. So you actually, if you look up letters of the previous Chabad Rabbis, you see mention of these organizations. Tiach, for example. Amolam is another thing. And Odessa was also, as much as it was a cosmopolitan city and an enlightened city, it was a mixed city too. And there was some from religious people came from Odessa. There's a story the previous Chabad Rebbe once he had Hasidim visiting him in his wherever he was at the time, let's say St. Petersburg, and so two different Hasidim. They both came from Odessa, and they both had a private audience with him, one after the next. And the story goes, one Hasid came to him, so the Rebbe asked him, so how is it in Odessa? So the Chassid was telling him, oh, well, we have a shul, and we have a little cheder, and we have evening time for learning, and we have a sheikhet, and we have a mikveh for the women, and that stuff. And another Chassid came, and he was complaining that, I don't know, some of our neighbors play cards, karten, some of the people go to the beaches, some of them go to the mixed dancing, things like that. Shanda. So he said, I didn't really want to know about Odessa. I just want to know which Odessa are you in. So in one city, you could have had, different milieus, so to speak. So that describes a little bit about the background in the old country and what the type of the Jews came here. Maybe in the following thing, we could follow their track of these three personalities, Moses Beck, Isaac Krasenstein, and Moses Brotman. We could continue talking more about them. We'll take your questions, but some things have to come to an end. We could continue. We know we could be here all night, and everyone could say their geschichte, their Megillah with their questions. Salem lived in America too for a period. He died actually, I think this time of year. I think maybe even in April. Maybe even April 16th.
Want to say who he was?
Shalom Aleichem was the Yiddish Mark Twain. He's a great Yiddish writer, satirist, and
he wrote the Fiddler on the Roof story.
He wrote the Fiddler on the Roof story, which we'll get to. And his Yiddish name, his real name was something Rabinovich. Shalom Rabinovich. And his pen name was Shalom Aleichem. And he spent some time. There's audio recordings of him on the Yiddish radio in America. He's buried in the Bronx. He maybe even come to violin on his tours because I know he did some reading tours.
But can I add to that? Everybody knows Shalom Aleichem,
right?
Except that many people, Jews, do not know that there are hundreds and hundreds of great writers in Yiddish literature.
Yes.
And they think Shalom Aleichem, the only writer there was in Yiddish. There wasn't.
Right.
He was one because he was so popular. He wrote so much for the newspaper.
Who was telling us his name was Solomon Namovich Rabinovich?
Yes.
He died May 13th.
Oh, May 13th. Okay, that's soon. May 13th, I think 1916, yes. I remember that because Shakespeare was 1616 and he's 1916. Shakespeare might be in April. Did anyone ever read Shakespeare in Yiddish?
It's much better in Yiddish.
They say it's Yiddish, it's verteidigt und verbessert. That's translated and improved. So Shalom Aleichem, the original Fiddler on the Roof comes from Shalom Aleichem. It was called Teved the Luchiger, Teved the Dairyman. If anyone can't read in Yiddish, I recommend you watch the film from Maurice Schwartz. Filmed in, I think it's Jericho, Long Island in the 1920s, perhaps. Beautiful film of Shalom Aleichem in Yiddish with English subtitles. I really highly recommend it.
What is
Is
it?
it on the internet, on the YouTube?
You might be able to find it. And so he has a series called which the Fiddler Roof comes from, Brieven from Menachem Mendel. Menachem Mendel was a Amcha Yid, a Jew struggling to survive with a bunch of daughters, and he would write letters to Shalom Aleichem complaining about his life. And when he would write his letters, write all these long letters, he would end off his letters writing Ad kan oimim the Shabbos Hagadol. It's Hebrew. This until here we say on Shabbos Hagadol. What does that mean? So you need to know. You have to go to a cheder background. You know, no, the early Yiddish speakers all that went to a cheder background. So soon as Pesach, the Shabbos before Pesach, this year it's going to be the day before Pesach. There's a custom to read part of the Haggadah that afternoon, but not the whole Haggadah. So if you look in a siddur, it would say in the middle of Haggadah, it would say after the song Dayenu, like right after that paragraph, it would say in small letters, in Klein Oisius, it would say Ad Kan, till here, Oimlim Shabbos Haggadah. Till here we recite the Shabbos Haggadah. Now the rest of it is for the Seder night. Ad Kan, but it became an expression when someone writes and talks too long. At some point you say Ad Kan Oimlim Shabbos Haggadah. Until here we speak of Shabbos Haggadah. The rabbi would also
to bring you off the stage.
The rabbi would also give his long sermon, the Shabbos before Pesach, and sometimes someone in the crowd may have to yell out if they had chutzpah. Ad kan oimlim Shabbos Haggadah. Rabbi, you're speaking too much. It's time.
The garnish help.
Health garnish. The rabbi continues speaking. You needed a cane dish. Schlep them up. So this kind of brings the formal. The formal shmuz to an end.
First of all, thanks so much to everyone who's here, of course in person, but also who's bearing with us on Zoom. And want to acknowledge William Levin, who is heroically and good-humoredly handling all of our technology here. Thank you. We'll be back here on this porch at 11 on Sunday, April 27th.
If
And then the week after that, we're going to have the month after that, we're going to have our third part of this 6-part series on Sunday, May 25th. So that's Memorial Day weekend. If anyone wants to hang out for Memorial Day again and join us here, that would be great. And we'll announce further sessions as we schedule them.
I want to shout out to some of my friends online. It's nice to see your names over here. I see Continental Envelope and Alex and Raphael. You're welcome to come here. Also Shalom Aleichem. It's welcome to come here also in person. The following, you have like another five opportunities to come here for a Sunday. This is a pastoral view here of the original farms, right in the intersection of Ship Street and Isaacs and Gershel.
we'll talk about
that more. This is a sneak preview, a little tease of what's to come, and it's very alive. And this is a Gilgal. This is a reincarnation of something I originally did it when I was working at a farm in Chicago, Continental Envelope, and we called it then Schmooze and Kvel. So we could also do that in a future. And I see also Rabbi Greenbaum here, Shalom Aleichem, and Aleichem Shalom.
And thank you again to the New Jersey Historical Commission for sponsoring this series, and also to Liz Posen and her family for sponsoring us. Thank you so much.